Good evening, I'm Anthony Robart. This is Crime Beat, the stories behind some of Canada's most high-profile homicides, told by the reporters who walk the beat every day. We reveal the shocking evidence as it was uncovered by investigators in their quest for justice. Tonight, a child's remains are found, but nobody has been reported missing.
You got a call.
Yes.
You know there are body parts.
Yes.
The left hand and forearm.
It's an obvious shock.
It's scary how people can just do something like that.
The most difficult one to deal with is that of a child.
A police officer came here this morning and just asked us to make a list of students who had been absent.
Here's Alan Carter with a story of a city's lost child.
Walking the rugged shoreline of Colonel Samuel Smith Park, it's picture postcard beautiful.
How long has it been since you've been back here, Rolf?
This will be the first time since January 2000. I haven't come here since.
This is also my first trip back.
The area that police are interested in looks a lot like this section of the park. Giant rocks with very deep crevices in between. Areas where it's possible more human remains might be hidden.
Rolf PRISOR is still haunted by what happened here.
But
So-
this is the area here.
So this is where, right down in here, is
Well,
where...
we would have. The initial bag, if memory serves me correct, was just found right in here. My name is Rolf PRISOR. 20 years ago, I was a member of the Toronto Police Service, attached to the homicide squad at the time.
And this is where Mary Smith would have seen just what she thought was a couple.
She would have been walking her dog
Right.
up that path there towards that tower.
On December 7th, 1999, Mary Smith took her dog Cody for their usual walk along the western tip of this park.
And she had observed this couple. And they actually, as a matter of fact, said something to her about her dog. And initially her thought was, you know, are they bearing drugs or something? Because they appeared to be dropping rocks on an area. And she watched them for a little while, sort of took note of the descriptions, and they watched her as well.
When the couple leave, Smith goes to see what they're burying.
So Mary eventually approached the bag, and it was warm. She recalled that there was a green garbage bag, double wrapped, so two bags, one inside the other. And she opened the bag thinking that maybe, you know, it was a dead dog or a cat or some animal because of the warmth of the bag. Her initial thought of it being drugs was sort of, you know, gone by the wayside at this point. So she opened it up and immediately she saw the hand and the forearm. So she closed it. It was, you know, horrific for her to see that. No doubt something that she would never have thought she would live to see. And she ran.
Smith runs to get help. And PRISOR gets a call that will change his career.
You got a call.
Yes,
You know there are body parts.
yes.
Do you know that when you first get the call that there are child's body parts?
No, we don't know that they're child body parts. We just know that they are body parts. And as is with any homicide investigation, you're starting to go through a lot of the processes in your mind as you're driving to the scene, trying to anticipate what you might expect to see.
Go ahead, Fred.
As we find the right hand, the right forearm, the right thigh, and the right upper arm. And initially to us, they appear to be those of a child between the ages of 4 to 12. And there's obvious indications that the body parts were obviously dismembered. And it appears that they were not, they were done with some precision. The cuts looked clean. There was still blood in the bag. So they were very, very fresh. It's an obvious shock. I mean, even to a seasoned homicide investigator or any first responders. I mean, we deal with tragedy on a day-to-day basis. But the most difficult one to deal with is that of a child.
The question on everyone's mind: who is this child?
Coming up, more grisly discoveries provide critical clues. It's the first time former homicide detective ROLF PRISOR has been back to the spot where 2 decades before, a child's partial remains were discovered. Now back to Alan Carter with A City's Lost Child.
It would have been, the bag would have been right in here?
Yeah, right in here. The bag would have been found in the opening crevices of the rocks. So you can see how deep the crevices are.
After that first bag with body parts was found, Toronto police and Detective ROLF PRISOR would get to know this area intimately, literally turning over every stone.
So you could stash something down there and
easily, and then just throw a couple of rocks on it, and then it's hidden from view.
The next day, a second bag is found, and it's another gruesome discovery.
The left hand and forearm, the left upper arm, and the left thigh.
Then, a third bag, but still no way to identify the young victim.
It's a horrific crime, and even, you know, save that there might be some explanation for it, to dismember a child like that is just beyond what anybody could imagine.
And as you remembered, we had the Marine unit out in the waters here, searching the shoreline. And this is roughly the area where Mary would have last seen them walking away.
and they were walking out of the park.
Out of the park, correct.
When she sees them.
That's right. And there was no indication from her at the time that there was any vehicle involved. Because we kept having the cadaver dogs come in and canvass in and around here and look for search points and hits.
You didn't have any surveillance video? You didn't have...
No, we didn't. We tried the satellite imaging as well, and that's why we ended up getting Global to come out and do the aerial footage for us, because we just didn't have it. We canvassed that whole area. We had our team go out to the various schools, check Catholic schools, public schools, for anyone that was absent from school that might fit the description.
A police officer came here this morning and just asked us to make a list of students who had been absent, counting from last Friday until today, students from junior kindergarten up to grade 5.
But police come up empty. And now with the remains taken away to be tested by forensic experts, a terrible fear begins to gnaw away at PRISOR. Police have parts of a child's body, but they just don't have enough to identify the victim. But detectives have one thing. They have a witness.
Once the composites were released, that generated a whole new slew of tips. It's huge, right? And she believed at the time that the language they were speaking was Spanish. And the description that she provided to Constable Tint at the time was that of people of sort of Hispanic background. So anyone or any couple that looked vaguely like the composites was sort of detained by investigators.
PRISOR gets a team together. They reach out to police agencies across Canada, across the United States. They tap into the missing children's registry. They interview over 900 people.
And again, at that point, we don't know whether we're dealing with a male or female child here.
As news spreads, people come together to try and console each other and to vow that this unknown child will not be forgotten. Then, new information.
The only searching today at Colonel Samuel Smith Park was on the water, as the Marine unit combed the shoreline looking for green garbage bags, like the ones found in the park last week containing the remains of a 4 to 6-year-old girl.
We were able to release the fact that the body parts were that of a female. How we could exclude any male child. We never gave up the search until we had exhausted every opportunity we had. To make sure that we've covered all the bases that we possibly can cover. There were some very dark days. I remember, meeting with the media out here and sort of, in very sort of dejected way saying, again, we're not successful today. We haven't found anything.
The police hotline on the case has received more than 120
For weeks, we air the composite on TV, the image of a mysterious couple, all of us thinking we're looking for a family of Hispanic origins. But the investigation is about to turn in a whole new direction.
This is the right lower arm. It's been dismembered through the elbow joint.
A press conference at police headquarters. Ontario's Deputy Chief Coroner has a horrifying image to share.
The X-ray doesn't actually add any information in terms of your release, but it was an extraordinary visual.
Yes.
What was your reaction when Dr. Cairns suggested doing that?
I was in total agreement with him. I thought that it was an excellent idea because it really generated that focus to the public and to the media that, we have to collectively, as a community, solve this investigation.
And it's just not the X-ray.
The 4 to 6-year-old girl may be of South Asian origin. It's likely it's the caregivers or the parents of this child who have done this horrendous deed.
So you're looking at countries like India, Pakistan, Bangladesh. And we had, prior to the press conference, we had discussions with members of the Muslim community to make sure that there wasn't going to be any backlash for the community, and to make sure that we were using the appropriate terminology as well.
So this is the actual prayer hall.
OMAR FAROUK is head of the IMO, the International Muslims Organization. He's been the president here and an imam for the past 20 years.
So, oh my God, it's an innocent child belonging to our community. When we heard that the child from South Asian belonging, it placed us in the position where we as community leaders, we had to be more responsible in the sense that, that we had to do whatever it takes for something like this not to happen again. It was too sad. It was too touching. And it did not only affect us as leaders of the community, but every household, every parent, every mother, every father, every child as well. And so the entire community was hurt. We were tuning in regularly to see the outcome of it.
The coroner had taken an unusual approach, but it struck a chord.
For me, it was a first to do it like that, but I think it was an excellent example of coordinated efforts.
And it really does solve the case.
It does.
Because Omar FAROUK and his congregation were not the only ones paying attention to the news.
Coming up, a teacher comes forward, and police finally have a name. Police revealed the victim is a little girl of South Asian descent. They're about to get the breakthrough they've been hoping for.
As soon as that press conference occurred, which was about 10 o'clock in the morning, it was at 12:39, while at the office that I got a call from Ole Caprati. Ole and Rick ROLF, his partner, were at 2nd Street Public School on a totally unrelated matter when they were approached by senior kindergarten teacher Heather Cartwright. And Ole was made aware of certain information, specifically that a young child whose name was Farah Khan had been a student of the senior kindergarten class, and that her last day in school was the 2nd of December, that she was technically supposed to attend school on the afternoon of the 3rd of December, but she was absent, and that her mother had attended the school and indicated that the mother's mother, so Farah's grandmother, was gravely ill in Pakistan, and that the family was going to be flying back to Pakistan on December the 8th to care for the grandmother. And there was no indication at that time of the family's return. And because of the press conference, and because of the fact that we had identified the child as a South Asian child, and the height and the weight, that prompted Heather Cartwright to think about that and to disclose that to Ole.
This is the first solid lead you have.
First solid lead.
Now police have names: Muhammad Khan and Kaniz Fatima. What investigators discover is that the couple had come to Canada from Pakistan with a young child in April of 1999. The name of the child? Farah Khan. But most importantly, police find items that belong to the little girl, including a red plastic sippy cup,
a cup that had Farah's name on it, that she had used in school,
and some artwork, including a finger painting.
So I got a pager message from the forensic identification. So I called her, and she gave me probably the greatest news I'd ever had. The fact that we had identified Farah Khan. Because the prints that were found on the artwork matched the fingerprints of the remains that we had found, and specifically the left middle finger. So now, this was a huge, huge break for us, because now we identified her, finally. Although we didn't have all our remains, at least we had focus. And I gotta tell you, like, thinking back, that was an emotional moment.
That phone call. Because up until that point, you have no name, you don't know
nothing
whose murder you're trying to solve.
That's right. It was like, you know, like a huge pressure coming off your back, right? So I immediately called the other members of the team and gave them the news, right? Because this was significant beyond words.
So you've said before, now you have everything.
We have everything. Now we have to find them.
But you don't know where they are.
That's right, we don't.
Police are able to trace the family to a West End apartment building, but the couple is gone.
Never heard anything. They were very, very quiet, which was really weird. I said to my wife too just before before all this happened. Then we never hear anything from them.
Did you ever see a little girl come out of the apartment next to you?
No, I didn't notice.
Never?
Never.
Did you ever hear any noises from the apartment next to you?
No.
They left 135 8th Street sometime around December the 24th and left no forwarding address and indicated to the landlord that they had purchased a house.
Police discover that Mohammed Khan and Kaniz Fatima, Farah's father and stepmother, had taken off so quickly they didn't even pick up their rental deposit.
They could have taken off, gone back to Pakistan or gone to the United States. So we had the airport squad checking on that. So in the meantime, I contacted Bill, and there was an unlisted number.
Using a child's game of hot and cold, PRISOR is able to get the information he needs.
So we were able to, simply by saying, okay, does the street begin with any letter between A and H, to identify the street that they actually lived on. And then the game continued with, well, what number, what house number? Is it 1 to 50, 50 to 100? And all she had to say was yes or no. So it worked, and we conducted surveillance on Khan for a number of days.
2 adults were arrested and charged with first-degree murder in relation to the body parts found on December the 7th, 1999.
I arrested Khan. At the same time, a woman approached, Kaniz Fatima. She was arrested.
Is that him? Putting somebody in?
Garbage bags were seized from this place of work as well, which coincidentally turned out to be, your generic green garbage bag that we found the body parts in. And warrants were executed on both addresses and property seized.
Coming up, how will Farah's father and stepmother explain their daughter's death? Welcome back to Crime Beat. Farah's father and stepmother have been arrested for their daughter's murder. Investigators now hope to get answers as to what happened to this little girl. Now back to Alan Carter with Farah Khan, a city's lost child.
We took both Khan and Fatima down to 22 Division. Conducted our interviews during the course of the day. And during the course of the interview with Mohammed Khan, he proffered what had happened to Farah.
She had problems for 10 years. She had a sickness. She had, problems earlier on with her sickness.
And basically said that he and Kaniz had gone out to the grocery store. And then upon their arrival home, they found Farah on the floor and she had cut her throat. We conducted approximately about a 4-hour interview, and Khan agreed to show us where he had planted Farah's torso.
But you had a problem.
We had a problem.
I was outside.
You were outside, amongst
many others.
Yeah, a multitude of media.
Is that him?
PRISOR decides on a ruse. 2 detectives dress up as the suspects and get into a car. As it drives away, we in the media follow.
And that video, which we played over and over, of what we thought were suspects in the back of cars, were actually police officers.
They were. And I apologized, to the media afterwards, but that was the only way for us to do that, Alan.
PRISOR and the rest of his team go with Farah's father back to Colonel Samuel Smith Park.
That just just around a rise in the ground. There's a rock, and that's where the spot is. I think it's around here somewhere.
Hold on. Yeah, just hold on. Hold on, just hold on. Hold on. No, hold on. We're in Colonel Samuel Smith Park at Lake Ontario in 21 Division. And it is still Wednesday, January 19th, 2000. He's indicated that these particular rocks over here to my left are where his wife was sitting as he deposited the torso remains of Farah Khan in a deep crevice in this particular rock platform. Against my rear and left, which is somewhat west of this rock that's dropping, there's a large antenna, I would estimate possibly 60, 75 feet tall. It's directly to the south and east of that particular antenna, and he is certain this is the one.
Because he's sure it's this one because he remembers the rocks, big rocks nearby here.
Then, Farah's father takes police to another location, north of the waterfront.
Where, during the course of the interview with him, he had indicated that he had buried Farah's head in the ravine. It was further detailed enough to say that he had actually placed her head in the knapsack, gotten on a TTC bus, and taken it up there, and buried it beneath a rock face down. He pointed out the rock on the ground, and there was Farah's head.
Yesterday, near the Humber River, less than 20 kilometers from Samuel Smith Park, police found the little girl's head. An autopsy was performed this afternoon.
We have decided that we've done everything humanly possible with respect to finding the remains of Farah Khan, and at this time we're going to close the scene off.
Farah's full remains would never be found, but the search was now over. At the International Muslims Organization in Rexdale, a shudder goes through the congregation.
Even though she was a child, but she still came, you know, with her parents then. Whenever members of this community look at her picture, other members recall seeing her here at the IMO, joining us for a meal, breaking the fast. We have seen her, and so we got involved.
One person still did not know about Farah's murder. Shahida Jabeen, Farah's birth mother, living in Pakistan.
It took some time to actually locate her. We as a police organization facilitated that with immigration. There was actually, you know, the community stepped forward and provided the airfare, accommodations. So there was a real outpouring by the community for Shahida.
Hey, get some water, please. Get some water, please.
With cameras rolling, Shahida Jabeen, Farah's mother, arrives in Toronto with her brother.
What has happened, I am really saddened and devastated. That should not have happened.
We had one objective, that this child has to bury here in Toronto.
Even though he's charged with her murder, Farah's father has custody rights, and he wants her buried in Pakistan.
He cannot return the body in full, but my request is, whatever it is, however pieces there are, just give them back to me so that I can bury her honorably and here.
We are collectively putting our heads and hearts together to see how best we can bring comfort and relief to everyone involved, especially to this child.
It reached to the point where we had to prepare a letter and send it directly to Farah's father, who was in jail at the time. And that's when the legal process took place.
We can get in there and start setting up. Hello, how are you? Nice to meet you, sir.
It's been 20 years, Khalid.
20 years.
Can you believe it?
I can't.
For more than 20 years, Khalid Usman has been a Markham City councillor. After Farah was murdered, he and others fought to keep her remains here.
I think we're going to utilize all the moral, persuasive
powers that we have to talk to him, and we will pray that he's persuaded.
The persuasion and the prayer pays off. Mohammed Khan relents. Farah Khan will be laid to rest in Toronto.
Why was it important to bury Farah here?
Well, because we wanted to make sure that the mother gets justice here. You see, because if it had gone to Pakistan, nobody would have cared. She would have never got her justice. Belongs here. And that's where she should be.
What do you remember of meeting Shahida when she came?
Well, when she came right from the airport. When she was brought, she came to my house. She met my family. We had a hard time actually speaking to her because she was in such despair. Like, you know, the word is very strong word I'm using, but she was jolted with this tragedy.
So what happened in this room?
This is the room which where we had the coffin for her.
La ilaha illallah.
And we allow her mom to spend some quiet moments with her, final moments with her. That's all she could have done, was to cry and cry and cry. So sad.
We believe that Farah is Shaheed, that she is pure, and that she has a place in paradise with Allah's permission.
It was our Friday congregational prayer, and we had about 3,000 people here in attendance. Detective PRISOR, the mayor. I had the mayors and police chief and all the prominent leaders of the community.
We've been involved with her now since December, and really we felt as much that she was part of our family as she was to the greater community, and of course until she was identified we were her only family.
You try not to become personally involved or emotionally attached, but sometimes it happens.
And this is the first time that Mary Smith, the woman who in December was walking her dog and helped solve this case, meets Farah's mother.
We connected very well. Yeah, we connected very well.
FAROUK is especially struck by the outpouring of support as they make their way from the mosque to the cemetery.
I can recall seeing passers-by stood firm in showing respect to Farah. So many. It was like that moment, like the Toronto stood still. Whenever there is a funeral service there at Beaches Cemetery, we always make the effort to go visit Farah and offer special prayers for her.
You'd like to say a prayer?
I'd like to offer a prayer for little Farah. A'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajeem. Bismillahir rahmanir rahim. Alhamdulillahi rabbil alameen arrahmanir rahim. Basically, it is for the prayer for forgiveness of the dead, and that's normally how we say Fatiha. So it is for their blessings. May Allah bless her. May Allah bless you for remembering her.
Next, investigators grapple with motive as the trial gets underway. Farah's father and stepmother are preparing to go on trial for her murder. But the question of motive troubles investigators, and the defense team suddenly presents a new version of events. Now, the conclusion of Farah Khan, a city's lost child.
Months after she discovered the body parts of a child, Mary Smith comes to court to see the couple accused of killing Farah Khan. Uncomfortable with showing her face, Smith speaks to the media for the first time.
How have the last couple of months been for you since December 7th?
Horrifying, absolutely horrifying. I can't believe it. You know, I can't sleep. I go see a psychiatrist. I mean, like, a lot of things have been happening. My life has totally changed with this, you know?
More months pass before the preliminary hearing starts. Then years of delays until the trial. It's now 2004, 5 years since Farah's murder.
We needed interpreters that were court certified to translate these statements that we had taken from various individuals.
But a lot of the information they gathered would be inadmissible.
We had Mohammed Khan attending a butcher shop on numerous occasions, watching how meat was cut. We had information that the motive for the crime might have been an insurance policy in Pakistan. While Khan was in jail, he made friends with a cellmate, which added a whole other dynamic to the investigation. Mr. X, as he became known. So we had many, many intercepts between Khan and Mr. X that some of them were allowed in evidence. And again, it was that insurance information that kept coming up. The fact that Khan viewed Farah as a bastard child, that he didn't believe she was his daughter.
That question of motive, it bothered PRISOR.
The first story was that Farah didn't want to go to school. She didn't want to go out with them. She wanted to watch cartoons. So they had to go to the grocery store on one occasion, and they left her alone at home. And then when they arrived at home, they found her on the floor with a knife beside her after having cut her own throat. That was the first story.
But Khan's defense team now presents a new story.
We're not taking any issue that he caused the death of his daughter. Our point is he didn't mean to cause her death, and he also will be accepting responsibility for having dismembered her.
Dropping the story that Farah had somehow killed herself.
She was mischievous. He had to discipline her, and that you know, it was an accident, that he didn't mean to kill her, and that he couldn't explain, because he was a newcomer to Canada, how she would have died. So they decided that they would just bury her, cut her up and bury her, because if they told the truth, nobody would believe them. So that was another version of events. Fatima's version was that she did nothing, that Khan came home, he was angry with the child because she was stealing cookies, and that he virtually beat her and then stomped on her chest, and then she died. And that they had no other recourse but to cut her up in the bathroom and then place her body parts in garbage bags and bury them.
And then they take that to trial, and the jury says?
No. They don't believe that at all. There's too many versions, too many stories. The precision cutting of the body parts. As I said, they didn't know about the insurance, but they just believed that because he felt she was a bastard child, that was his motivation for killing her.
And that's murder in the first degree.
That's murder in the first.
This jury has heard a lot of evidence. It's been a challenging 2.5 months for them, and we're very gratified by their efforts and by the result they've reached.
Obviously, Mr. Khan is disappointed in the verdict. We've met with him. He will be instructing counsel to appeal. We have nothing further to say. Thank you.
In some way has given to justice for Farah in ways that we could not have otherwise done.
The difficulty, you know, is that we were never able to really ascertain what part Kaniz played in this. She obviously didn't do enough to stop it. But there was evidence of bruising, 30-odd bruises. You know, slippers were used, hairbrushes were used, a rolling pin was used to beat Farah. Khan worked every day. So, You know, one could speculate that not all these bruises were as a result of Mohammed Khan. But in the manner in which the verdicts came down, I think, yes, it was appropriate that he be found guilty of first and she of second.
Mohammed Khan remains in custody. Kaniz Fatima is out on parole. We contacted Corrections Canada, but they would provide no further information about their whereabouts.
Will he ever get out?
He will never get out. No. No, he'll be locked up for the rest of his life.
As for Shahida Jabeen, Farah's birth mother, after the funeral, she went back to Pakistan. Officials in Canada worked to get her immigration papers, and she moved back to Canada not long after. She now resides in the Greater Toronto area.
It places us in the position where we as community leaders, we had to be more responsible in the sense that, that we had to do whatever it takes for something like this not to happen again.
She only lived to 5.
Yes.
But what do you know about Farah's life? What kind of girl she was, or what do you imagine she was like?
From the information that we had been able to obtain from some of her, the parents of children that she attended school with, she was a very sweet child. You know, she would often go and have lunch at some of the other kids' homes. She was never a difficult student in school at all. She was quiet, you know, and sort of unassuming. Very pretty little girl. By all accounts, Farah was a wonderful little child. I don't believe that we ever, prior to Farah Khan, had a case that involved the dismembered body parts of a child. And I think the citizens of Toronto, when this came out, it really impacted them. There's a sense of relief that we were able to identify Farah, and we were able to arrest those responsible for her murder. And in some small way, honor her memory. Because, you know, for homicide investigators, when we're doing an investigation, we speak for those that can't speak anymore. And it's very important for us to be able to solve an investigation, and especially one as horrific as this one was, involving an innocent child who, for no reason unimaginable, was brutally beaten, killed, and dismembered by her own father. I can't even imagine that.
When I talked to you earlier this summer, I mean, you knew when Farah's birthday was.
Yes, yes. She was born on February the 4th.
But you just know that off the top of your head.
I do.
You've never forgotten it.
I celebrate her milestone birthdays, just like personally, you know. So, I mean, during the trial, she would have turned 10. Her 19th birthday, you know, just out of thought, and 21st and 25th. It's a case we'll never forget. So the impact is lasting until our last days. It'll always be there.
This case would never have been solved without the tireless efforts of investigators like ROLF PRISOR and the support of the community leaders who came forward. Everyone determined to help find justice for an unknown little girl, her identity almost stolen along with her life. I'm Anthony Robart. Thank you for joining us tonight on Crime Beat.
To hear more about other high-profile Canadian cases, Check out the podcast Crime Beat with me, Global News crime reporter Nancy Hixt. You can listen for free on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or on CuriousCast.ca.